a young woman, a kitten, an old Jeep Cherokee, and 3,000 miles of open road ahead. On March 9th, 2000, 23-year-old Leah Roberts kissed her old life goodbye, chasing answers to questions only the horizon could hold. But just 10 days later, her journey would end in a place nobody expected, and Leah would vanish without a trace. What happened in those dark woods? Why did her car tell a story that made no sense? And why, after 24 years, does her disappearance still haunt anyone who hears it? The road trip wasn't an escape. Not really. For Leah Roberts, it felt more like a calling, a desperate, urgent pull towards something she couldn't quite name, but felt deep in her bones. She wasn't running away from her life in Durham, North Carolina. At 23, she was running toward something else, something she needed to find. Life hadn't been easy for Leah in the years leading up to that cold March in 2000. The weight of loss hung heavy around her. First, her mother passed away. Then, just a few years later, her father was gone too. Imagine that, losing both pillars of your world before you've even truly started building your own. It left a void, a profound loneliness that settled deep. She tried to move forward, enrolling at North Carolina State University. But college life, the structure, the expectations, it just didn't click. It felt hollow, meaningless against the backdrop of her grief. She dropped out. The future she thought she was supposed to want seemed to dissolve, leaving her adrift, searching for solid ground. Then came Jack Kerouac. She picked up his book. On the road, it wasn't just a story for her. It was a spark thrown onto dry tinder. Kerouac's words about freedom, about the raw, untamed experience of America, about throwing caution to the wind and just going, they ignited something wild and restless inside her. It spoke directly to the ache she couldn't articulate. The open road wasn't just asphalt and scenery. It became a symbol of possibility, of shedding the heavy skin of sorrow and expectation, of finding answers, or maybe just better questions somewhere out there. Beyond the horizon, it promised a kind of healing she couldn't find sitting still. The idea didn't simmer. It exploded. It was impulsive, almost reckless, fueled by that potent mix of youthful yearning and deep-seated pain. She didn't spend months planning an itinerary. She didn't book motels or map out rest stops. This wasn't that kind of trip. This was pure instinct. She walked into the bank and withdrew her entire life savings, $3,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was everything she had. Enough for gas, food, maybe some cheap campsites. Enough to chase the feeling Kerouac described. There was one companion she absolutely couldn't leave behind, her little orange tabby kitten. B wasn't just a pet. She was a tiny anchor, a living piece of home and comfort in the vast unknown Leah was about to plunge into. Packing the Jeep Cherokee wasn't about meticulous preparation. It was about grabbing essentials, clothes, a few books, Kerouac likely among them, some basic camping gear, and, crucially, her diabetes medication. Leah had type 1 diabetes. Forgetting that insulin wasn't an option, she packed cans of food, not just for herself, but for B too, and she packed her journal. This small book held her thoughts, her fears, her fragile hopes. In its pages, she scribbled the words that would become her mantra, her only real plan: follow the wind. No destination, just movement, just feeling her way forward, guided by an inner compass set to seek. On March 9th, 2000, with the engine of the old Jeep rumbling, Leah Roberts took one last look at Durham. She kissed her old life goodbye, not with sadness, but with a determined, if uncertain, hope. She pointed the car west, be likely curled up somewhere nearby, and merged onto the highway. 3,000 miles of open country stretched before her. She wasn't chasing a job or a person or a specific dream. She was chasing understanding. She was chasing peace. She was chasing the elusive feeling of belonging somewhere. Anywhere, after feeling so profoundly lost. For days, the miles unfolded. She wasn't entirely off the grid. The need to connect, to reassure, or perhaps just to hear a familiar voice, surfaced. She used payphones. She called her older sister, Kimberly. These calls were lifelines, brief check-ins from the vastness she was traversing. The first call came from Washington State. She'd made it across the continent. Then, another call, this time from Oregon. The details were sparse. She was okay. She was seeing the country. She had B. She was camping. It was the picture she wanted to paint, the intrepid adventurer. finding herself. But the tone, even through the crackle of a payphone line, might have held hints her sister only recognized later. Was there a flicker of uncertainty beneath the brave front? A trace of weariness? Or was it just the normal fatigue of a long drive? It's impossible to know for sure. What we do know is the content. She was moving, exploring, living the Kerouac dream, 1 mile at a time. Then came the last call. From somewhere, likely still in Washington state. She told Kimberly she was heading into the mountains to camp. The Cascades. Majestic. Beautiful. But also vast and isolating. Her words were simple. A promise meant to comfort. I'm camping in the mountains. I'll call soon. Just like that. A statement of fact and a reassurance. She'd be out of touch for a little while, immersed in nature, but she'd reach out again shortly. Kimberly hung up, probably expecting the phone to ring again in a day or two. Maybe Leah would describe towering evergreens, the crisp mountain air, the stars undimmed by city lights. Maybe she'd talk about chasing bugs or curling up by a campfire. Maybe she'd share a fragment of the peace or insight she was desperately seeking. But the call never came. Soon stretched into hours, then days. Silence settled where her voice should have been. That simple, everyday promise, I'll call soon, became the last trace of Leah Roberts, the vibrant, grieving, hopeful young woman who set out to follow the wind. The silence after that call wasn't just an absence of sound. It was the beginning of a mystery that would echo for decades. The mountains she spoke of so casually would become the backdrop for the chilling discovery that she hadn't just gotten lost on her journey. She had vanished from it completely. 10 days. That's how long it was between Leah Roberts' last brief phone call to her sister and the moment everything changed. 10 days of silence. 10 days of waiting for that promised follow-up call that never rang. Then, on March 29th, 2000, deep within the dense, mist-shrouded forests of Washington's Cascade Mountains, loggers stumbled upon something that shouldn't have been there. Off the winding, remote logging road known as Bear Creek Road, down a steep, brush-choked embankment, hidden almost completely by towering evergreen trees, lay Leah's Jeep Cherokee. It wasn't parked. It was wrecked. It looked like it had crashed down the slope and come to rest against the thick trunks. The initial, grim assumption was obvious. A tragic accident on a lonely mountain road. A young woman, perhaps tired from driving, losing control. But as investigators and Leah's desperate family arrived at the scene, that simple, terrible explanation began to fracture. Piece by piece, the evidence whispered that this was no ordinary accident. Something else, something deeply unsettling, had happened here. First, there was the state of the Jeep itself. The ignition was turned on. The headlights were still blazing, cutting beams through the forest gloom even in the daylight when it was found. This suggested a sudden event. Maybe a crash that happened at night, leaving the lights burning. But then came the contradiction. The engine was stone cold. If she'd crashed with the engine running, it should have been hot, or at least warm. But it wasn't. It was completely cold. That didn't fit. How long had those headlights been draining the battery? How long had the car sat there? Lights on. Engine cold. Before it was discovered, it hinted at a gap in time, a disconnect between the moment of impact and when the scene was found. Then, the focus shifted from the vehicle to the immediate area around it. This is where the picture became truly strange, defying easy explanation. Near the wrecked Jeep, investigators found items that spoke of deliberate action, not the chaotic aftermath of a violent crash. Several cans of food, the same kind Leah packed for herself and B, were discovered. But they weren't scattered or crushed. They were neatly arranged on the ground outside the vehicle, lined up, purposefully placed, like someone had set them out, ready to be used. Next to these cans, a sleeping bag was found. Again, it wasn't tossed aside or tangled. It was laid out flat, smooth on the forest floor. It looked exactly like someone had carefully unrolled it, preparing a place to sleep, a makeshift bed, right there beside the crashed car. This detail alone was profoundly odd. If Leah had survived a terrifying crash down an embankment, injured and disoriented, would she have the presence of mind, or the physical ability, to meticulously lay out a sleeping bag? Would she calmly arrange cans of food? It felt too ordered, too deliberate for the chaos of an accident. Then, attention turned back inside the Jeep. The driver's seat. It wasn't in the normal upright position for driving. It was reclined completely flat, all the way back, like a bed. This detail sent chills through those examining the scene. What did it mean? Several possibilities, all unsettling, presented themselves. Had Leah, injured, crawled back into the car after the crash and reclined the seat to rest? To try and recover? Had she been hiding, lying flat to stay out of sight from someone or something outside the Jeep? Or had someone else reclined that seat? Someone who wasn't Leah? The image it conjured was eerie. Someone lying hidden in that driver's seat, waiting, or resting, within the wrecked shell of her car. Adding another layer of strangeness was the lack of any obvious signs of a violent struggle inside the vehicle. The windshield was cracked, consistent with an impact, but the interior wasn't torn apart. There was no blood. None. Not on the steering wheel, the dashboard, the seats, or the shattered glass. This absence was stark and troubling. If Leah had been injured in a crash forceful enough to send the Jeep down an embankment, surely there would be some trace of blood? Even a minor injury could leave a mark. But there was nothing. It suggested, incredibly, that Leah might not have been seriously injured, or even injured at all, inside the car at the moment of impact. Or, perhaps, she wasn't even in the driver's seat when it crashed. And then, the most glaring, chilling absence of all, Leah herself. She was gone, vanished. The Jeep, her belongings, the carefully arranged campsite setup, it was all there. A silent tableau. But Leah was not. Her purse was found inside the Jeep. Her wallet was still there, untouched. It contained cash. Her precious journal was found, open. But Leah, nowhere. B, her little orange kitten, the constant companion on her journey, also gone. No sign, no trace. The small creature who depended entirely on Leah had simply disappeared along with her. No soft mew was heard in the woods. No tiny footprints led away. Both Leah and B had evaporated from the scene. So, the picture that emerged was a forensic puzzle, a collection of details that refused to form a coherent story of a simple accident. The cold engine versus the blazing headlights. The violent wreck versus the neatly arranged cans of food and the perfectly laid out sleeping bag. Items suggesting calm preparation after the crash. The driver's seat reclined flat, hinting at rest, concealment, or an occupant who wasn't driving. The complete lack of blood inside the vehicle. The untouched money. And the utter, complete absence of the two living beings who should have been connected to this scene. Leah Roberts and her kitten. B. This wasn't just a crash site. It felt staged. It felt manipulated. It felt like a scene carefully constructed to tell one story, an accident, while whispering a much darker, more confusing truth underneath. The wreck of Leah Roberts' Jeep Cherokee wasn't the end of her journey. It was the beginning of a terrifying, unanswered question mark hidden deep in the Washington woods. Every piece of evidence found that day didn't provide answers. It only deepened the mystery, painting a picture that logic struggled to accept. This wasn't an accident. Something else happened here. Something wrong. The wrecked Jeep in the Washington woods wasn't just a scene. It was a riddle, a collection of pieces that, instead of fitting together to form a clear picture, only created more confusion as investigators poked and prodded, searching for answers about Leah Roberts. The clues they found seemed to whisper conflicting stories. Some hinted at deliberate actions. Others pointed towards danger. But none of them agreed on what truly happened. First, there were the items that suggested Leah might have simply walked away. Her purse was inside the Jeep. Inside her purse, they found her wallet. And inside her wallet, cash. Her entire life savings, the $3,000 she'd withdrawn back in North Carolina, was still there, untouched. This was significant. If robbery was the motive, why leave the money? It was a glaring detail that argued against a random theft or attack. It suggested Leah hadn't been robbed. Or perhaps, that the person responsible wasn't interested in her money at all. What were they interested in? Then there was her journal. It was discovered inside the car. Open, not tossed aside, but deliberately placed. Pages exposed. It was open to a specific passage. A quote from Jack Kerouac's On the Road, the very book that had inspired her journey. The quote was chilling in its new context. "The only people for me are the mad ones." The words spoke of a yearning for wild, untamed life. Seeing it there, open at that particular quote, felt heavy with meaning. Was it a final message? A grim coincidence? A sign of her state of mind, embracing the madness Kerouac described? Or had someone else opened it to that page? The journal offered a haunting echo of her motivations, but no concrete answers about her fate. It was a clue that deepened the mystery, not solved it. But the scene surrounding these personal items screamed something else entirely. It screamed tampering. It screamed that things were not as they seemed. The most bizarre and technically puzzling clue involved the Jeep's electrical system. The battery in Leah's Jeep was dead. That made sense. The headlights had been blazing for who knows how long. But here's where logic took another sharp turn. Someone had connected jumper cables to that dead battery. But they weren't connected to another car. No, the other ends of the jumper cables were clamped onto a separate, disconnected car battery. And this second battery wasn't just lying around. It had been deliberately hidden, tucked away under a pile of brush and debris nearby, like someone didn't want it to be easily found. Why? This question hung heavy in the air. Why go through the trouble of rigging up a hidden, secondary battery to a dead car battery? What was the purpose? Did someone desperately need power from the Jeep's electrical system for some reason? To run the radio? The lights? Something else? Or was it an attempt to start the Jeep again after the crash? If so, why hide the extra battery? And why abandon the effort? This wasn't just odd. It felt calculated, secretive, and utterly baffling. It was a piece of mechanical ingenuity that served no clear, understandable purpose at the scene of an accident. It felt like a desperate act, or perhaps a deliberate act meant to confuse. Then came the evidence from the road itself. Investigators carefully examined the area above the embankment where the Jeep had plunged down. They looked for tire marks, skid marks, anything to show how the vehicle left the road. What they found sent another jolt of unease through the investigation. The skid marks. They weren't what you'd expect from a car losing control in a panic. They didn't show the frantic, twisting patterns of someone slamming on brakes or overcorrecting. Instead, the marks were different. They looked straight. They suggested the Jeep hadn't careened off the road wildly. They suggested it had been driven, or more chillingly, pushed, straight off the edge in a controlled manner, like it was deliberately forced over the embankment. This painted a picture of intent, not accident. Was the crash itself staged? Was it made to look like an accident when it was actually something else? Finally, there were the footprints. In the soft earth around the crash site and the embankment, searchers looked for any sign of footsteps, Leah's, or anyone else's. They found some, but the pattern they found was deeply unsettling. The footprints only went in one direction. They led away from the crashed Jeep. There were no prints circling the vehicle. No prints approaching it from the road above, and then leaving. No prints returning to the scene. Just a single set of prints, walking away from the wreckage into the vast, surrounding forest. Who did those prints belong to? Leah? If so, why only walk away? Why no sign of her trying to get back to the road for help? Was she disoriented, running, or were they the prints of someone else? Someone who had been at the scene and then simply walked off into the woods? The single-direction prints felt like a ghost trail, hinting at movement but offering no destination. No context. They added to the feeling that someone had left the Jeep and never looked back, vanishing deliberately or being led away. So, what were investigators left with? A wallet full of cash, arguing against robbery. A journal open to a quote about madness, hinting at a troubled or rebellious state of mind, but proving nothing. A dead car battery rigged to a hidden spare battery. A bizarre act with no clear explanation. Skid marks suggesting the Jeep was deliberately pushed off the road, pointing towards foul play or staging. And footprints leading only away, suggesting a departure. But not why or with whom. Each clue seemed to lie. Or at least, each clue told a different part of a story that didn't make sense as a whole. Was this a staged accident designed to make Leah disappear? Was it a desperate cry for help that went terribly wrong? Or was it something far darker? A trap set in the wilderness, sprung on a young woman who only wanted to find herself? The clues pointed fingers in every direction, but never landed on the truth. They weren't answers. They were questions wearing disguises, deepening the shadow around Leah Roberts, vanishing with every confusing detail. The forest held on to its secrets, and the clues left behind only deepened the chill. The police had a scene. They had confusing clues, but they didn't have Leah, and they didn't have answers. As the official investigation moved slowly, weighed down by procedure and the sheer strangeness of the case, Leah's family refused to wait. Her sister, Kimberly, her brother, Jason, they couldn't just sit by. They dove in themselves. They retraced Leah's last known steps. They knocked on doors. They plastered missing posters everywhere. They became detectives driven by love and desperation. And what they started to uncover, it was chilling. It painted a picture of Leah's final days that was far more disturbing and far more urgent than anyone first imagined. But every time they thought they had a solid lead, it dissolved like smoke. The truth kept slipping away. Their first breakthrough came from Seattle. Leah had called her sister from a payphone in Washington state before heading towards the mountains. Now, the family learned something crucial about that time in Seattle. Just days before her disappearance, Leah had visited an ATM. She withdrew money, but it wasn't just a routine transaction. Security camera footage from the ATM existed, and it showed Leah Roberts with a visible bruise on her face. A clear, dark mark. Seeing that image sent a jolt of cold fear through her family. What happened? How did she get hurt? Was it an accident? A fall? Or something else? Something worse? That bruise became a glaring, unanswered question mark over her final days. It was the first sign that her journey might not have been the soul-searching adventure she described. Trouble had found her before she even reached the mountains. Then came another unsettling piece. The family tracked down her movements. They discovered that shortly before she vanished, Leah had been at a diner. Not alone. She was seen having a meal. But she wasn't by herself. She was with two men, two strangers. Nobody in the diner knew who these men were. They weren't regulars. They were just two men, eating with Leah Roberts. Who were they? Friends she'd just met on the road? Fellow travelers? Hitchhikers she'd picked up? Or something else entirely? The family tried everything. They showed pictures. They asked endlessly. But the identities of those two men remained a complete blank. They were ghosts, shadows sharing a meal with Leah before she drove into oblivion. Their presence raised terrifying questions. Were they connected to her disappearance? Did they know something? Did they do something? But without names, without faces. They were just another dead end. Another frustrating piece of the puzzle that refused to fit. Further down the timeline, as Leah presumably headed east from the Seattle area towards the Cascade Mountains, another potential witness emerged. A truck driver. He came forward with a story. He swore that on the night Leah was believed to have vanished, the night she told her sister she was going camping, he saw her Jeep Cherokee. It was late. It was dark. He was driving his big semi-truck along a stretch of highway near the mountains. And in his rearview mirror, he saw a Jeep. It was tailgating him aggressively, riding his bumper, uncomfortably close. He remembered it clearly because it felt dangerous, especially on those winding mountain roads at night. And he remembered the Jeep matched the description of Leah's. Could it have been her? Was she driving erratically? Was she scared? Was she being chased? Or was someone else driving her Jeep that night? The trucker's account placed her vehicle, or at least a vehicle like hers, in motion, heading towards the area where it would soon be found wrecked. It was a snapshot, a fleeting moment on a dark road, but it was the last possible glimpse of Leah or her Jeep before everything went silent. It hinted at urgency, maybe panic, in those final hours. These discoveries, the bruised face at the ATM, the meal with two unknown men, the Jeep tailgating a truck, should have propelled the investigation forward. They were tangible threads. They pointed to specific moments, specific people, specific actions in Leah's final days. They screamed that something was wrong, that danger was circling. They demanded answers. Who bruised her face? Who were those men? Why was her Jeep driving like that? But nothing happened. The frustration mounted, thick and suffocating. The Seattle bruise? No explanation surfaced. No witness came forward to say how she got it. The two men at the diner? Despite the family's pleas, despite flyers and media appeals, they never came forward. They were never identified. Not a single lead pointed to who they might be. They vanished as completely as Leah herself. The truck driver's sighting? It was compelling, but it was just one man's memory. There was no corroborating evidence. No other witnesses. No traffic cameras to confirm it. It remained just a story, a chilling possibility, but not proof. The police had no suspects. How could they? They had ghosts, shadows on, an ATM tape, faceless men in a diner, a fleeting image in a trucker's mirror. Nothing concrete, nothing to grab onto, no one to question, no one to pursue. The trail, built on these chilling family discoveries, went cold almost as soon as it was found, and the crushing absence remained. Leah was gone, vanished, without a trace. No body was ever found in the vast wilderness surrounding the crash site. No shred of clothing. No personal item dropped along a trail. Nothing. The forest, dense and ancient, seemed to have swallowed her whole. It offered no clues, no remains, no closure. It kept its secrets locked tight. Even Bee, the little orange kitten, Leah's tiny companion on her journey, shared her fate. Bee vanished without a sound. No trace of the small cat was ever found. No bones, no collar, no sign she ever existed beyond the cans of cat food left behind. Her complete disappearance alongside Leah felt like a final, heartbreaking detail. If Bee had simply run off scared after a crash, surely some sign of a small cat might have been found nearby. But there was nothing, just silence. Bee's absence screamed that whatever took Leah wasn't an accident that scattered them. It took them both, completely. So, the family was left with ghosts. Ghosts in the machine of the investigation. Ghosts in the grainy ATM footage. Ghosts sitting across from Leah in that diner. A ghostly image of a Jeep tailgating in the dark. These were not answers. They were echoes. Hints of a darkness that touched Leah's journey in its final days. They painted a picture of a young woman who might have been in trouble, who might have encountered dangerous people, but they provided no names, no faces, no paths to follow. Every lead, every chilling detail uncovered by her heartbroken family, dissolved into nothing. The suspects were phantoms. The body was missing. The kitten was gone. The forest, the mountains, the roads, they held every answer tightly. They gave nothing back. The ghosts were all that remained, haunting the investigation, haunting the family, whispering of dangers seen but never understood. In the days before Leah Roberts and her little cat, Bee, stepped off the map forever, the machine of the search kept running, but it was processing shadows, leaving only frustration and an unbearable, unanswered urgency in its wake. When a person vanishes without a trace, especially under circumstances as strange as Leah Roberts, the void demands filling. People try to make sense of the senseless. Theories sprout like weeds in the cracks of the unknown. Some are plausible, some stretch the imagination. But in Leah's case, every single idea, every possible explanation, seems to hit a wall. The evidence refuses to cooperate. The facts poke holes in every story. We're left staring at theories that ring hollow. One of the first thoughts that often comes up: did she stage it? Did Leah Roberts choose to disappear? Start a new life somewhere else? Leave her old troubles behind? On the surface, maybe. She was searching for meaning, disillusioned, grieving. She had withdrawn her cash. But look closer, and this theory crumbles. Fast. Leah had type 1 diabetes. It's not a condition you manage casually. It requires constant vigilance and a critical, life-sustaining medication, insulin. Forget it. And the consequences are severe, potentially fatal, within days. And Leah's insulin? It was found, left behind, in the Jeep. She wouldn't have just walked away without it. It wasn't an optional item. It was essential for her survival. Leaving it behind screams that she didn't plan to vanish forever. It screams that something happened that prevented her from taking it. Something sudden. Something she didn't choose. Okay, so not a voluntary disappearance. What about a tragic accident after the crash? Maybe she survived the Jeep going off the road, wandered injured into the vast wilderness, and succumbed to the elements? Or worse, fell victim to an animal attack? It's a common fear in the deep woods. But the scene argues violently against this. The neatly arranged cans of food, the carefully laid out sleeping bag. These aren't the actions of someone staggering away, bleeding and broken, into the forest. They suggest calm, deliberate preparation. Someone took the time to do that. Furthermore, if she had wandered off injured, even if animals took her remains later, searchers would almost certainly have found something. A scrap of clothing caught on a branch, a dropped item, a disturbed patch of ground, a single bone, something. The search teams combed that area extensively. They found nothing, not a single trace of Leah or Bee. An animal attack leaving zero evidence, no blood at the scene. No disturbed ground, no remains is practically impossible. The forest floor tells stories. It told no story of Leah Roberts dying there naturally. So, foul play. It seems the most likely path. Someone hurt her. Someone made her vanish. But who? And why? One popular theory involves the dangers of the road. Leah was young, traveling alone, trusting. Maybe she picked up a hitchhiker. Maybe someone she met seemed friendly but turned dangerous. A predator disguised as a fellow traveler. It's a terrifyingly common story. But again, the evidence throws a wrench. Her wallet was there, full of cash. $3,000. If a random hitchhiker turned killer robbed her, why leave that much money behind? It makes no sense. Robbery is a powerful motive. Leaving that cash untouched points away from a random, opportunistic thief. It suggests the person responsible wasn't interested in her money. They were interested in her. Or perhaps they were interrupted. Or maybe it wasn't random at all. This leads to whispers of other possibilities. Some people speculate she might have encountered a different kind of group. Did she find, or was she drawn to, some kind of hidden commune? A group living off-grid? Did she willingly join them? Cutting all ties? It's a romantic notion. Perhaps fitting her Kerouac-inspired quest. But the reality is bleak. No such group has ever come forward. No one reported seeing her. There's no evidence she was seeking that. And again, the insulin. Leaving it behind makes joining a peaceful commune just as unlikely as staging her own disappearance. Her health depended on it. Then there are the darker whispers. Washington State, around the year 2000, wasn't free from monsters. Notorious serial killers like Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, were active in the region during overlapping time periods. Could Leah have crossed paths with pure evil? It's a chilling thought, and geographically plausible. But there's no direct link, no signature, no evidence connecting her disappearance to any known serial predator. It remains a terrifying possibility floating in the void, impossible to prove or disprove. The problem is, no matter which theory you pick, staged disappearance, accident, animal attack, random hitchhiker killer, commune, serial killer, the specific, bizarre details of the scene refuse to fit neatly. They stand like stubborn roadblocks. That hidden battery. Why? Why rig jumper cables from a dead car battery to a spare battery hidden under brush? What purpose did that serve for any of these scenarios? If Leah was staging something, why this complex electrical tinkering? If a killer was there, why would they bother? If she was injured and disoriented, how would she even manage it? It's an act of strange, almost nonsensical effort that fits nowhere. The driver's seat, reclined flat. If she crashed and fled, why recline it? If she was hiding, from who? If a killer was there, why adjust the seat? It feels like an intimate, specific action. Out of place in chaos. And the money, always the money, untouched. It's the detail that undermines robbery, undermines a random act. It points towards a motive that wasn't financial, a motive that was personal. Personal, that's the feeling that lingers over the whole scene. The untouched cash, the open journal on the quote about madness, the hidden battery, like a secret, the reclined seat, suggesting someone lingering, hiding, or resting within the wreck. The carefully arranged campsite items after the crash, the footprints leading only away. None of it feels random. None of it feels like a simple, violent encounter or a tragic mistake. It feels deliberate. It feels controlled. It feels targeted, like someone knew Leah, or knew of her, and wanted her gone, wanted her to vanish quietly, without a loud struggle, without obvious signs of murder, wanted to create a confusing puzzle that would lead nowhere, wanted the forest to swallow her without a clear story ever being told. But who? The men from the diner? Someone from her past? Someone she met on the road who became obsessed? We have no names. We have no faces. We have only the hollow echo of theories that collapse under the weight of a reclined seat, a hidden battery, and $3,000 left shining in an abandoned wallet. The evidence doesn't support a clean story. It only whispers that someone wanted Leah Roberts gone, and they were careful, methodical, and chillingly successful in making sure she disappeared without leaving a clear trail back to them. The theories remain hollow because the truth, whatever it was buried deep, leaving only unsettling questions and the grim certainty that the simplest explanations simply don't fit the disturbing picture left behind in those Washington woods. Leah Roberts didn't just vanish. It wasn't a simple disappearance swallowed by time and distance. What happened to her? Somewhere between the promise of a phone call and the wreckage discovered in the Washington woods, left behind something far more unsettling. It left a riddle etched in the rust of an abandoned Jeep, scattered among the pine needles, whispered in the silence of a hidden battery and a reclined car seat. It's a riddle that refuses to fade, even after 24 long years. Most missing persons cases are tragedies of absence. A person is gone, and the void is immense and painful. But Leah's case is different. It's not just the absence. It's the presence of the scene she left behind. It's the bizarre, conflicting clues that scream something happened. Something wrong, but point maddeningly in no clear direction. She didn't just leave. She left a story without an ending. A crime scene, perhaps, but one that defies understanding. A carefully arranged campsite beside a wrecked car. Money left untouched. A journal open to words about madness. Footprints walking only away. It's a puzzle box locked shut, buried deep in the forest. And we can't find the key. Think about who she was in that moment. Leah wasn't running from the law. She wasn't fleeing danger we knew about. She was a soul searcher. A young woman, carrying the heavy weight of losing both parents far too soon. Feeling lost in the world she was supposed to build. She found inspiration. A spark of hope. In the pages of Jack Kerouac. The open road called to her as a place of healing, of discovery, of finding out who she really was beyond the grief. She packed her cat, her savings, and her courage, and she trusted the journey. She trusted the freedom of the highway, the kindness of strangers, the solace of nature. She set out with a heart full of yearning for meaning, whispering to herself, "Follow the wind," and that's why it cuts so deep, because the road, the very thing she trusted to guide her, to free her, seemingly betrayed her. The freedom she sought vanished into the darkness of the Cascade Mountains. The journey of self-discovery ended in a place that offered no answers, only terrifying questions. Her quest for truth became a ghost story whispered in true crime circles and around campfires. The young woman chasing horizons became the woman who vanished without a trace. The hopeful adventurer became an enduring enigma. Think of her sister, Kimberly. Think of the last phone call. The simple, everyday words. "I'm camping in the mountains. I'll call soon." For 24 years, Kimberly has carried the weight of those words. 24 years of soon, stretching into an agonizing forever. Every ring of the phone, for a split second, might be that call. Every knock on the door might bring news. That hope, that desperate, lingering hope for a resolution that never comes, is a special kind of torture. It's the torture of the unresolved, the unanswered. It's the echo of a sister's voice promising to call, forever suspended in the air, never landing. Kimberly still waits. She waits not just for Leah, but for the truth that would finally tell her sister's story. Think of Bee, the little orange kitten, a tiny, innocent life caught in the same inexplicable vortex. Her disappearance alongside Leah feels like a final, heartbreaking punctuation mark. The empty cat food cans arranged neatly near the Jeep are a silent testament to a presence that vanished completely. BA's fate is a small, sharp detail that underscores the totality of the vanishing. Nothing was spared. Why does this case, among so many, cling to our thoughts? Why does Leah Roberts haunt us? It's the jarring disconnect. It's the collision of hope and horror. The sheer ordinariness of her quest, a young person seeking answers, seeking themselves, twisted into something so profoundly extraordinary and chilling. It's the specific, stubborn details that refuse to make sense. The headlights blazing on a cold engine. The sleeping bag laid out like a bed beside a wreck. The driver's seat reclined flat. The jumper cables rigged to a hidden battery. The cash left behind. These aren't just clues. They are artifacts from a moment frozen in time, screaming a story we can't decipher. They are the rust and the pine needles of the riddle. It haunts us because it feels like a violation of a fundamental trust. The trust that the road, while unpredictable, offers a path forward. The trust that nature, while wild, isn't inherently malicious. The trust that if something terrible happens, the evidence will eventually speak. The truth will out. Leah's case mocks that trust. The road led her into silence. The forest swallowed every trace. The evidence speaks in tongues we cannot understand. And so, we are left circling the same, unanswerable questions. When Leah drove into those mountains, what did she find? Did she find the peace she was searching for? Did she find a moment of clarity, of understanding, beneath those towering trees? Or did the darkness she was fleeing finally catch up to her? Did the truth she sought turn out to be a truth too terrible to bear? Or, most chillingly of all, did the truth, a truth she never asked for, a truth she never saw coming, find her first? We don't know. We may never know. The mountains keep their secrets. The forest floor holds its silence. The Jeep rests, a monument to a journey that ended in a question mark. Leah Roberts and Littleby vanished. But the riddle they left behind? That remains. Vivid, unsettling, enduring. It lingers in the air. A poignant reminder of a young woman who followed the wind, only for the wind to carry her away into a mystery that time has not solved. That's why she haunts us. Not just because she's gone, but because the how and the why of her vanishing are lost in the shadows, leaving us forever staring into the dark, wondering what really happened on that mountain road 24 years ago.